of the donut is not endless growth. The goal here is to leave nobody in the hole, falling short on the essentials of life this is where people live without resources they need for health, education, housing, food, water, income, social equity. These are drawn from the Sustainable Development Goals. So every government in the world has already agreed that every person in the world has a right to live above this social foundation. Leave no one in the hole. But we know that as we seek to meet people's essential needs, we are at risk of overshooting these planetary boundaries on the outside. These are the critical life-supporting systems of our planetary home. Climate breakdown is ecological overshoot of the planetary boundary. Ocean acidification, chemical pollution, the hole in the ozone layer, excessive fertilizer use. We know that we risk destabilizing this one known living planet in the universe. So, the goal is to meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet. And the shape of progress is instantly transformed. It's no longer ever-rising growth. It's thriving in dynamic balance between this inner and outer ring. And if that is the shape of progress, well, we are very far from that right now, as all of the red in this image shows. We are overshooting multiple planetary boundaries, while already leaving millions, indeed billions of people falling short on the essentials of life. The 21st Century Project is to eradicate all of the red from this picture, eradicate human deprivation, eradicate this ecological overshoot. And of course, we can only do this if we do these at the same time. There's no way that we can ensure every person alive has decent education, food, housing, personal security of their home and of their community if we are in a context of climate and ecological breakdown. How will we do this? Every country in the world is on an unprecedented journey to this transformation, because there's not one country in the world that is currently meeting the needs of all of its people within the means of the living planet. And I believe that the technologies that are in the room with you today, many of the technologies that enable us to gather this data, are key to enable us to have these new kinds of metrics for the future we want to create. In the 20th century, people gathering metrics focused a lot on economic metrics and on refining the measure of gross domestic product, national income. And I think that is going to become a metric of the past, because the metrics, the data we actually need to be measured in terms of life itself, in terms of Earth herself, measured in terms of human well-being, our health, our security, our connectedness to others, but also measured in terms of planetary health, whether it's parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, whether it's satellite image, GIS of deforestation, whether it's the quality of water or the quality of air or soil. We need technologies that give us the metrics of life in her own terms. We also need to transform the dynamics of our economy. We've inherited linear, degenerative economies like a hose pipe. We take Earth's materials, put them in the pipe of production, make them into things we want, use it for a while, and then throw it away. And that take, make, use, lose pushes us over those planetary boundaries. We need to turn this linear, degenerative economy into a circular, cyclical, regenerative one, where resources aren't used up, they're used again and again. Again, we of course need new technologies that are purposed to enable us to create circular economies. We also need to learn how to measure how circular are our economies becoming, how regenerative by design are they becoming. At the same time, we've inherited economies that tend to drive opportunity and value into the hands of a few. We are seeing phenomenal rise of the global 1%. The number of billionaires in the world has more than doubled over the past decade, from 1,000 to 2,000 and now more billionaires. That divisive world will never end the deprivation of humanity within the means of the planet. We need, instead of this divisive world, we need a distributive world, where value and opportunity are shared far more equitably with all who co-create. I'm glad you like that. And how do we do that? How do we create distributive societies? Again, this comes down to the technologies that we use. The technologies that we use, whether they capture value and opportunity in few hands or distribute it far more equitably. And so I want to say, for every technology that's in the room and every technology that we believe can help us transform the future, I would be a detective about the design of that technology. 5 design traits. I invite you to reflect on your own company or your own organization and the technologies that you're bringing. Think of any technology that matters. What is its purpose? How is that technology being put to use to transform the future of the world? How is it being networked with other technologies? How is it relating to others? How is it affecting those whose data we're gathering? Who is that data being provided to? How is it connecting in with the ecosystem of technologies? Crucially, how is this technology being governed? Who has voice in deciding how and when it's being used? And the metrics of whether it's being used well or not. Going deeper, we get to more profound issues. How is the technology owned? Is it owned by a private founding entrepreneur? Is it owned by a shareholder-owned company? Is it owned by the state? Is it owned by a foundation, a stewardship organization, a not-for-profit organization? Because how the technology is owned is going to profoundly shape, of course, how it's financed, where that money to make the technology successful is coming from, and therefore what that money is demanding, how much it's investing, and how much it's extracting for the owners, or how much it's reinvesting in the purpose. So for me, any technology that I encounter in the world, I can see its positive applications, I can see some really challenging and troublesome applications too. What makes the difference between these two? It's these 5 design traits. And I invite everybody in the room today to be a detective about any technology that you are considering. How is it purposed, networked, governed, owned, and financed? Because we know that this will make all the difference to whether these technologies are used to enrich a few and actually exploit and extract in the world, because that's been happening a lot, or whether they're used to bring humanity into this space, used to enable us to meet the needs of all people, to come back within the needs of the living planet, to measure life in her own terms, in terms of human well-being and planetary well-being. And if we do well with the technologies that we now have, and we have, I believe, the technologies that we need to thrive within the Doughnut, if we use them well, they can show us life in completely different terms. We will develop the metrics that enable us to measure for every single country, in every single city, and every single region, whether or not it's thriving in the Doughnut. And I profoundly hope we'll be able to look back in maybe a decade, and the metrics of last century will seem so crude. To judge a country's success by its GDP, by its national income, will seem insane. Let's measure life in her own terms. Let's make the technologies that we have actually be put to work with the design, owned and governed and financed in ways that actually serve us in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kate.